Is there sound in space?
Yes.
Has anyone ever heard these before? This is always on my favorite radio station. Ask my kids or my wife what my favorite radio station is. You want to hear it again? Probably not. And they'll tell you. If you turn your AM dial to some place between the stations, that's what you hear. It's lightning. What does this have to do with assessment? We're getting there. Okay, so what happens is, you guys all know about the magnetic field of the Earth. There's a big magnetic field around us. Well, when there's lightning in South America, the sound propagates along the magnetic field lines, and you get this. Maybe. Multi-hop whistlers.
Multi-hop whistlers.
See? All right, that's enough of that. Quiet. It doesn't work. So what does that have to do with assessment? I have no idea. But it was fun, yeah. And this website. So now we'll get on to the really interesting stuff. You can see I have 12 minutes and 55 seconds left. Okay, so Gene and I were going to work on this, and we didn't get around to it until just recently. So I'm going to blast through this data that you all gave us from last fall. And why does this not work? Okay, so who has no idea what Gen Ed assessment is? Dave Brack. All right, who knows everything they want to know about Gen Ed assessment? All right, not everyone raised their hands, so we're going to talk about this. Basically, the way we've been doing Gen Ed assessment is everybody embeds assessments for specific rubrics in their own course. And if you don't know anything about this, talk to your neighbor. They know about it. There's these common rubrics, which we could launch, but I'm not going to. There's a link, and this will be out on the website. If you want to go there, you can talk to me or Gene. But basically, everyone measures at least 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of these on every student in their classes every semester to get a feel for where we are in terms of our general education objectives. And there's currently 19 of them. So some people assess all 19 on their students, some people only assess a few. So each instructor reports the course, what rubrics they measured, the date, of course, the student's S number, and that way we can correlate it with things like the number of credit hours they've earned, their GPA, their test scores, and so on. Okay, so one of the things we've looked at in the past is some validity measurements. So I guess this was a while ago, we did one, and you can see that if we look at scores, maybe I'll just skip this. Here's the one from last fall, and you can see that it's similar to what we've seen in the past. The red line is the GPA. So this data point right here, for example, is the score on 1C. 1C is reading, the ability to, I don't know off the top of their head, the ability of a student to be able to, I'll get this eventually, come up with secondary the wording is not coming to me. Pardon me? Anyway, I should have chosen 1A. 1A is just basic reading. Can you get the main points of your reading? 1B has to do with can you see what examples the author has put in there to support, yeah, supporting evidence, that's what it is. 1C and 1D have to do with being able to make conclusions from what you've read, okay? And you notice, so what we've done here is we've taken all the students who we have scores for 1C, and if their GPA is above 3, we put those in one hat. If their GPA is 3 or below, we put them in another hat. We average all of them in the one hat, plot that in the blue. In the greater than 3 GPA, we plot them in red. So you can see that the students with higher GPAs tend to score higher than the students with lower GPAs. And then we've got error bars on these lines, so you can see what the standard deviation of the, well actually it's a 95% confidence interval around those data points. So you can see that they're fairly well separated, but sometimes they're only separated by about 0.2 of a point. And one of the things that the committee's looking at this coming year is moving away from the 3-point scale, which we did because we were hoping for better inter-rater reliability. If I look at a paper and I score it as a 2, chances are anyone else will score it as a 2. Yeah. The committee's looking at moving to a 5-point scale, which supposedly gives you better resolution, but inter-rater reliability is going to be an even bigger issue then. So you can see in most cases this is separated by a couple, 2, 3 tenths. In some cases, like over here in the 5s, well, in the early 5s, which is where most of the data is, 5 is responsible citizenship. You wouldn't really expect students with high GPA necessarily to be more ethical than, I don't know. So that kind of makes sense. And then in problem solving, what happened to my mouse? In problem solving here, this is 4A through 4D. There's not enough resolution there. I mean, those aren't separated as well as we would like them to be. Anyway, so a couple of summers ago, the committee got together and had a powwow. I've given you this slide before, so this is a review. We looked at this, we said, yeah, it seems to be telling us some interesting things, so let's keep going with this. Because the alternative, one of the alternatives is to buy a test like the CAP test, like we used several, well, it was a decade ago now. And it was super expensive and we didn't really learn that much, so the return on investment was kind of low. We're down to 6 minutes. So during that powwow that we had a summer and a half ago, no, a year and a half ago, summer 2011, we decided that reading was one of the places we needed to concentrate on. And so that fall in service, several of you did some presentation for us. Susan Harris did, talked about under-resourced readers. Terry Compton talked about annotating the reading, and Lori Holdred, I don't have the title of her talk, but oh, I changed it. I had Reading Rocks. Dang, I'm sorry, Lori. So one of the measures that we've looked at is for each of these scores, so we take all of your scores and all the ones that you gave us 1A, can they identify the main point of a particular reading that you've given them? That's 1A. And we average them, okay, for different semesters. So we've been doing this since spring of 2009, and you can see 1A, can they identify the main point, has kind of rattled around, so it really hasn't changed much. Same with all of them. Now, in the summer of 2011, we didn't have any of this from here over. Oh, that doesn't make sense. So you can see from here over wasn't there, so there was definitely a downward trend up to this point. And then right after we did our presentations, you can see it went way down on 1C. Well, is that really way down? Well, our error bars are like this, okay? So are those really different? Well, it's part of our problem here. We have this big error bar thing, but it kind of looks like there was a downward trend, and it now kind of looks like we're back on the upswing. So we'll have to see what the future holds, but that's encouraging. When we talk about writing, these have kind of been all over the board, and one of the reasons for this is we get a lot of scores from all over the place. And so there's no real clear trend here. I've posted these slides up, so if anyone wants to stare at them and see if they can come up with a trend, they can say, and maybe come up with something, but I didn't for this one. Critical thinking, you can see that this 3D seems to be kind of lowish during these years, but it's come back up. So recently things are looking good in the critical thinking arena. In the problem solving arena, we have one problem area. So 4B is the ability to estimate. And I think people that have their students do estimates, is that good? Not so good? So I have a show of thumbs. To be able to estimate things reliably. Okay, I have 2 ups, 3 ups, 4 ups. Okay, so why is this data like it through the floor? So you people that just did a thumbs up, you need to measure that next semester. Responsible citizenship. These numbers, especially for 5B and 5C, there's very few data points that come in, so the error bars are even bigger. And 5A is basically somewhere around 90% of the students. And you know, I should have mentioned this. What I'm actually plotting here. What we're plotting here on the vertical axis is the fraction of students who score a 2 or a 3 compared to the number of students who got a score in that level. Okay, so for example, in 1A here, it looks like about 93, 94% of all of the 1A scores were either 2s or 3s. The others were 0s. Sorry, 1s. It doesn't go to 0. 1, 2, 3. No zeros. Questions about any of that? In the last minute and 45 seconds, this probability of positive slope, this is sort of a value-added measure. What we do is we look at, we take all the scores from your students, we grab their S number and compare it to how many credit hours they've earned to date. And so we write those two numbers down. So say for 1A, we have the student scored 3 and they've earned 44 credit hours so far. Here's a student that has scored a 1, but they've got 20 credit hours or whatever. So you'd expect that the more credit hours they earn at TSJC, the higher their score is. So what we do is a statistical procedure where we find, what's the probability that this curve actually rises. The more credit hours they earn, the higher their score. And you notice in some cases it's scary. 1B back in the fall of, that's back last fall, was negative. So for the particular student group that you sent data in for 1B, it was definitely a down slope. The more credit hours they were earning, the less their ability to come up with secondary or supporting evidence, or even the name of the rubric for that matter. That was a joke. That's my problem. The students seem to have a downward trend, so that's a problem area. I lost my mouse. 2B, which has to do with writing to the main point, also seems to be kind of low. 1D, which is implications. 3D, which is very similar to 1D, so that's encouraging because those measure almost the same thing. Oh, that was... I guess I have to quit. All right. So, here's this. Can I give myself another minute? No. Okay, I'll shut up. Any questions?
Bob.
Yes.
When we're looking at these graphs, what do we conclude?
That's this page. Generally, this process we're using seems to kind of work. I mean, it's definitely got some bugs. Higher GPA has higher scores, so that's encouraging that it's sort of telling us something. Value added. In other words, the more credit hours people are earning, the higher their scores. For most gen ed objectives, that's what GEO stands for, except for 1B and 3D. Those seem to be big problem areas this last semester. And in terms of the fraction of students successful there seems to be a marginal increase for the reading Gen Ed objectives. And the bottom line, there it is, at the bottom, which is where bottom lines go, is that we really need to, and we've been saying this for semester after semester, we need to figure out how to do some norming. So all the people that are measuring 1A need to have a conversation and say, what is a 3 really? What is a 2 really? And one of the ways people do that is they get together and they score a paper, then they trade papers and somebody else scores it. And then if the scores are more than one different, then they have a third person score it, or they have a discussion and duke it out. Okay, other questions? Thank you, Lori. All right, so I don't know who is up next. That would be me. That would be Brian is up next. You have a-
Okay, what we're going to do now is go through the 1-minute poster presentations. And what we're going to have you have a choice here. You can either stand by your poster, which I think is probably what most of us did last year, but if you prefer to come up here to the front and use the mic, you may do so. And we're just going to go through them in order, beginning with you're number 1. Then we'll begin with number 2, and I'm just going to go through them numerically, okay?
I object.
Well, that's because I was representing all of you.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so anyhow, we're going to go through all. It's about 30 of you, okay? You have exactly 1 minute to summarize what is on your poster. And then we're going to move on to the next person, and then the next person after that until we're all done. And Lynette here is going to be our timer, and she's going to do it one way or another. I've heard that there's objections to using this.
If it doesn't work, I can't hear it.
Oh, okay. But I'm going to let Lynette decide how she's going to time you. But when your minute's up, in order for us to stay on schedule, we're going to just stop, and then we're going to go right on to the next person. So we're aiming to be done with that at about looks like it'll be about 1:18 we want to be finished by. And then we're going to have the open viewing of posters for about an hour and 15 minutes. And during that time, the first half of that, if you have an even numbered poster, we're going to ask you to stand by it so that as other people come by, they have a chance to talk with you directly. And you can explain stuff to them, and then we're going to reverse roles, and then after that, for the second half, those who have an odd numbered poster will stand by your poster while everybody else goes around. Does that make sense? Okay. So, number 1 is going to be, number 2. Poster number 2 is Susan Harris. Okay, let's quiet down and let's go ahead and get started.
Hi, I'm Susan Harris, and interpersonal communication, the new trendy name for it is soft skills. It's about teaching people to talk with one another instead of at one another. So what I brought today is a sampling of some excerpts from student papers in which they try to interact with some real-life kinds of situations based on some of the concepts that we talked about in class. So I hope you have a chance to look it over, because I also brought some of the research as to why interpersonal communication is so important. 24 more seconds.
Okay, next up is Kay Evans at number 3.
She is not here.
Oh, so we'll go on to number 4, Judy McLaren.
What my
presentation is about is I've gone to using online homework systems for my classes. And so what it really allows me to do is I've chosen a program objective or program outcome, a course outcome, and a general ed outcome. And what I can do from the data that I can collect from this program is I can go in specifically and see how the students have scored with respect to each one of those learning outcomes. So it'll show me if only 20% of them got that learning outcome, that I really need to focus on that. And so that's what this is. It just shows you what I can see from my data, because I always tell my students I'm a lazy person. I'd rather write CO2 than carbon dioxide, because CO2 only has 3 letters. And so for this program to do the statistics for me is what I like. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Number 5, Leslie Watson Flores.
In the math lab, I do embedded assessment on each of the final exams for all of the developmental classes that we have in there. And we specifically address the gen ed outcomes 4A and 4B, which involve problem solving and performing calculations. And so my presentation has examples of each of these problems that I put on the final exam. Most of them are story problems that encompass more than one concept that the student learned in the semester. So they have to put several different concepts together to solve a particular problem. I also have the results that we've obtained from each of those assessments, and then changes that we've made in the math lab as a result of the assessments that we've done.
Number 6 is me. Okay, so I wanted to deal with this particular instructional problem. How can the history instructor in a hybrid course facilitate online, 1, discussion of textbook readings, 2, critical thinking about history, and 3, collaborative learning, such that limited face-to-face time is optimally leveraged for achieving the best results. And my solution to that is basically to put my students into an online wiki discussion circles in such a way that each student has a different role from week to week, that they have to contribute to the wiki, and that applies historical thinking and requires collaboration in which they comment on and respond to one another. And the rest of this explains how that works. Okay, Nathan, number 7. Back on the side.
All right, I use a lot of red overuse for some reason, but in my biology class and a lot of biology classes, I wanted to focus on the scientific method and how that could be kind of a synonymous with assessment. So I picked 3. I picked 3C evaluates evidence for accuracy and relevance. 4B determines a realistic answer, and then 4A. And then I took some scientific method questions, and then I used an experiment that we did in the fall with the potting plants as a scientific method, and talked about a couple things. Group work is big in my classes, so I put the scientific method steps, and then how these 3 assessment numbers, or I guess I should say student learning outcomes, could be addressed through the use of the scientific method, and then got to see if their experiment what coincided with the hypothesis and the conclusions. All right.
That's excellent.
Okay, number 8, Sadie Burns. She's not here. She's not here, okay. Number 9, Gina.
Here's mine. It's going to be on doing portfolios. Back in 2010, we decided that for our program, instead of doing individual course assessment, we would go with a program portfolio. And so we just created the capstone course and then had our students come up with a portfolio. And it works pretty well. But then Jean sent me a link to a webinar, and this is an example of what Loyola University Chicago put together. It's over a 4-year span, and I really liked it. It has how it's set up for the students, for the faculty, and the nice thing about it is they start with understanding what the capstone is going to include, the e-portfolio. And anyway, take some time to read it. It's really good statistics from employers. They're wanting to have the proof that the students can actually do something. So very, very good. And so we're going to revamp our program and incorporate a seminar on having a capstone.
Number 10, Sean.
Okay, so being new here, this is more a new idea than it is anything else, but I've been using a program called Applia that was created by an economics professor at Stanford who wanted a program in order to do assessment, statistics, and other things in regard to students, but also engage the students in in-class activities and also in problem sets that they do on their own, which integrate interest and engagement in the students. So there are over 5,000 instructors and 1 million students at over 1,700 institutions that have been using Applia. It's done through Cengage Learning. And I included information about an in-class experiment that we did in microeconomics class that I think you'll find very interesting and was very engaging to the students. Thank you.
Number 11, Jillian.
Okay, well, Bloom's taxonomy is near and dear to my heart and probably always will be. So because I prepare students for health careers, it is really important to take them as they come out of K through 12 with this mentality of being fed like baby birds and actually develop their critical thinking levels. So I've collected 5 semesters worth of data now. And when they first take my very first test, they are somewhat good at regurgitation. But the 3rd level here, they are not very good at the upper levels of critical thinking. Second test, you start to see, they get a little bit better in the remembering, but the analysis goes up and even the upper levels of critical thinking. By their final exam, they're really super good at recall, but we're even rising in the upper levels of critical thinking. So that's my goal, and I hope you have a few minutes to look at that, but 5 semesters and it was so strong a trend.
Number 12, Cindy.
Cindy's not here. She's teaching.
13, Anne Marie.
Thanks, Pansy. Okay, so this is my first year doing a poster. So I took all the student learning objectives and I took them into the business class and I said, okay, help. So what they decided was that we're on a mission like Star Trek. I have Trekkie students. So the mission of the business management program, the mission statement's written right here, and they said it's almost like we're on a new mission. You know, we're adapting technology, we're adapting different situations, especially ethics and customer service skills. So what they did is they decided to design this. And we had some humor here with the guy in the technology and the programming and all of that, because sometimes that's definitely a problem. And they also laughed at me with tax time, because this was my first year doing taxes, as everybody knows, but they said we did a really good job, and for assessment they gave me an A, and they want us to continue on this mission into new horizons and develop new things that we have not gone before. No, to boldly go where no one has gone before, and they want us to live long and prosper.
Okay, number 14, Kathy.
We recently, well, last fall, had a grant awarded, Perkins Grant, for some new technology. And one of the really awesome outcomes of this system, this front desk system, which will take care of their time clock, it'll take care of appointments, but it even does so much more. I can pull up a student's record and see how many services they've done, how long it took them to do that service. I can see maybe what they've generated as far as service sales, and it can go on and on. There's a wealth of different reports that can be run for students, so data is going to be generated by this system and help us to review where maybe a student has weaknesses, where they have strengths, where we can help them and customize maybe their educational experience to bring them up to industry standards. And I think it's a really big motivator they can take with them to their employer, their future employer.
Number 15, Dave.
I'm not here. Last year worked so well combining more than one discipline, I decided to combine 3: theater, music, and economics. My reach exceeded my grasp. It's just economics. They had to do a rap. And the most interesting part of it was they had to measure each other on how well they cooperated. And I put that into the 5th assessment. And you can see the outcome. I don't know. I'm not the statistician to figure out what it all means. But I was very pleased because a couple of the groups did really amazing raps, and I wish I could play them for you, but we didn't get them videotaped or audio, so next time.
You can do them.
Number 16, Ryan.
All right, we have the gunsmithing department's assessments from the top down. We have a 6-step process for our assessment. Step 1, determine your mission statement. I won't go through reading that. Upon that mission statement, we go to step 2, and that's develop program level student learning outcomes. The students need to learn. Step 3, we step over to develop courses that teach those outcomes that you need your students to learn. Step 1 to 4, you have your student learning outcome. Step 4, go to your develop the courses. Step 5, we get the descriptions and competencies in the topical outline. Step 6 goes into the methods and instruments used to deliver the information, and each step is built upon by the one prior to it.
Number 18, Billy.
I teach ag business management, and I selected one project to use for the assessment. It was having the students set up a spreadsheet and put in the formulas to calculate financial ratios off of numbers off of a balance sheet. We do this in class, then they take it home and they have to do the same thing with their own financial numbers. So they get 2 chances at it and get pretty good at it. They have to compare the results with industry standards so that if they go to the bank for a loan, they can look at that banker and know what he's thinking about them when he's looking at their loan application. These are the gen eds that matched up with this project. This is the sheet that I used to evaluate their competencies. And so I overlaid the gen ed assessments on it so that once I do their grade sheet for the end of the semester, I can calculate the gen eds. Thank you.
24, Desi.
Assessment is in the higher learning area. And so the first thing we want to know about assessment is who is your creditor and what are they expecting from you and what do they want. And so here I have what the Higher Learning Commission says about student learning assessment and accreditation. The second thing you want to know is the actual cycle. Again, the life cycle of the animal will help them survive, just like knowing the cycle or the assessment cycle at the college is going to help you do your assessment, what you need to do and when you need to do that. Now, going through here, when the higher learning chameleon comes or the commission comes, Assess Mantis is able to spring or fall, again, depending on which semester you choose to do your assessment for these particular things, come over to a certain type of tree. Now, always remember also that the tree's base is the program level outcome that you're looking for. Moving up to the course level, and then the gen ed would be all the different branches coming off of that. So again, even though you're assessing maybe 1C, it goes with your course level and program level, but just, again, it's all about moving around and trying to get all those different data points at different times.
Okay, 25, Chuck.
So my poster this year is more of a general view of assessments rather than just one specific thing that I've. But when you start is it like herding cats? Does project planning feel like herding cats? When I get new students in the semester, it does feel like herding cats. I have different personalities, I have different skill levels. So for quite a while, it is like herding cats. So around midterms, are things getting better? They usually are. We usually have people working. Still have some cats over here, but it's usually better by around midterm time. And then finally, end of the semester, mission accomplished. Do I have students working together as a team? As all our team building efforts paid off? In safety and production.
26, Tanner and Jen.
30 seconds apiece. I like to spread it apart and use like a basic system on the automotive system. So we use brakes. Brakes will identify if they're able to do the job efficiently. So if you have noises or anything like that, then you probably need to go back and see why you have those issues. So we try to a little bit basic more, a little basic part of the automobile because they're extremely technical these days.
And it's a safety issue
Oh,
too.
very
Right. I still use my pictures, live pictures in the shop. The kids get a kick out of that because some of that stuff is the stuff that they have done. And since there are thousands of actually parts to identify that we both have to relay to our students, it helps them in identification of that and pre-test, post-test. That's it, I guess.
27, Diamond.
All right, so first of all, this is for human growth and development. And one of the things that we found is kind of a favorite project is our whole class kind of end of the year project, and it's Lifeline that we asked them to come up with. So there's 3 different parts to it. First of all, we want them to answer the question in terms of human development, what's more important, nature or nurture? And so we have them research their family history. We have them write down different markers that they met experience-wise throughout their lifetime in terms of human development. And then we have them combine that, and so hopefully they can be able to distinguish fact from opinion in that, and have them come up and present their lifelines along with their genealogy chart.
Okay, 28, we have Deb, Terry, Cello, and Judy, all in 1 minute.
This was a wonderful experience, interdepartmental. I came over and gave a science presentation to several of the English classes. So our data right now are more qualitative than quantitative, but there are many, many different ways we can go with this. We want to encourage other departments to work together in this kind of analysis. And then
No, you're not done.
Oh, I'm not done. Oh, shucks. All right, I gotta keep talking. All right, what I did was give a PowerPoint. It included a little pretest in there. We didn't let them know it was a pretest. We did not. We can do a lot better job of collecting our post-test data. What we want you to do is look at the impact this made on the kids. We took a real life environmental disaster. None of them had really thought about before. So we made an impression on them for their future stewardship of the planet. And hopefully, you can ask during our other session, hopefully improve their writing as well. We're trying to make them scientifically aware and be able to use real world examples to inspire them with their writing assignments. Please take a look at that.
Okay, number 29, Jillian Stokes.
Come over to Kinzig. Come to Kinzig. Keep coming. Keep coming. Okay. I'm gonna say one. I have a lot of stuff. I gotta talk fast. You gotta say 1, 2, 3. Go. Okay. Welcome to Kinzig. Kinzig is a project that we put together for nursing education. One of the things that we want to do in the nursing program is make our education practical and instill in a responsibility of our students of doing both critical thinking and clinical judgment when they're caring for patients and people and communities. So we made our own community. We have a virtual community of Kinzig. We have residents of Kinzig that students take care of. They do online and didactic, but mostly case-based learning. They have a newsletter in Kinzig. Kinzig has its own radio station, KNZG. You can listen to podcasts. It has its own television station. And we use all these modalities to help students get the holistic approach of doing patient care and treatment. We have embedded assessments, and you can read through those. And these address more of the learning outcomes that we're trying to get with students in regards to clinical reasoning and critical thinking and clinical judgment as far as caring for patients as people. So take a peek at it and let me know if you have questions.
Sherry.
What I decided to do is I took an effective assessment. I had an assessment that 90% or more of my students over 6 semesters got an A or B on, and I just decided to deconstruct it and find out why it's so successful. It's successful for me as an educator because it meets the program goals, student learning outcome, and gen ed assessments. Plus, it's reliable. It assesses what I want it to assess. But what I think what makes it really great is that it has a lot of, it's my instructional strategy, I think. I use the I do, we do, you do approach, where I model a lot of the components of the activity ahead of time. Students do partner work with it, and then they do independent work based on my guidelines and a rubric that I give them. And they find that it meets their needs because it's meaningful, it's relevant, and they have a lot of choice in how they want this activity to go. So that's it.
33, Sue.
Okay, I called mine why pilot studies are important, which should give you an idea of what my results were. The question was, I wanted to know if students who spent more time on their studies got better grades. And the answer was, my hidden agenda was that if I asked them to keep track of the time spent, would they spend more time? And the answer to that is no. I had one student that said that he or she actually spent 2 hours and 2.5 hours the whole semester. But facts, reasons, excuses, and future plans has to do with we didn't start until late, we finished early. I have a lot of students, I give them the opportunity to do makeup work and extra credit work at the last minute. We didn't keep track of that. So I made a list of things that need to be changed. But what I did, as far as the next time I do this, so that I get better information, because they didn't keep track of everything. I also put a thing called comments on comments, because it turned out that my impression, I didn't have enough to really do any statistics, but my impression was that the students who wrote the most comments are the ones that got the better grades. And there's a form that says comments.
34, Doug.
This is all sort of related to a phenomena that I think we're all aware of, and that is that our students actually think differently than we used to think, and therefore learn differently. And about 3 years ago, I did a survey with students asking them from a whole list of different modes of delivering content, which they preferred, which they found most enjoyable, and which they considered most effective. And one of the least effective, of course, was sitting and listening to a lecture, and one that they rated highly was videos. So in the first altitude poster thing, I did a project where I used videos, breaking the video up into segments, where I'd stop the video and do iClicker quizzes so that it wasn't so passive. I've moved to online courses, and so that approach hasn't worked on the online environment. So I've developed a number of different videos and podcasts that I use 10-minute videos and then immediate quizzes.
Okay, is there anybody else that might not be on my list, but you have a poster? Okay, everybody, from now until 1:45, if you have an even numbered poster, we ask you to go to where your poster is so that you can talk more in depth with those who come by to visit. And then at 2 o'clock, we'll change